should the person with the most delegates at the end of this primary season be the nominee, even if they are short of a majority? Senator Sanders, I'm going to let you go last here because I know your view on this. So instead, I will start with you, Mayor Bloomberg.
Whatever the rules of the Democratic Party are, they should be followed. And if they have a process, which I believe they do,
I'm trying to do
so
this,
that
yes or no,
everybody else,
fast.
everybody can.
So you want the convention to work its will?
Yes.
Senator Warren.
But a convention working its will means that people have the delegates that are pledged to them, and they keep those delegates until you come to the convention. All of the people.
All righty. Vice President Biden?
Play by the rules.
Yes or no? Leading person with the delegates, should they be the nominee or not?
No, let the process work its way out.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Not necessarily. Not to listen.
Senator Klobuchar?
Let the process work.
Senator Sanders?
Well, the process includes 500 superdelegates on the second ballot. So I think that the will of the people should prevail. Yes.
Thank you, guys.
The most votes should become the nominee.
5 no's and a yes.
So what you just heard there was Chuck Todd asking the final question in last night's MSNBC debate live from Nevada. And the question was basically, does the person with the most delegates automatically get to become the nominee even if they don't have a majority on the first ballot? And everyone but Bernie Sanders said no. All of them, Warren and Bloomberg and Biden and everybody else, said that the process should quote unquote play itself out. But what they mean by that, and I'm not mincing words here, is that they are leaving the door open for backroom dealers and superdelegates to steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders. That's what they were saying. Bernie hit the nail on the head last night. When the process after the first ballot adds 500 or so unaccountable superdelegates who do not in any meaningful way reflect the will of the people. And that is unacceptable for a party that's trying to put forward a democratic vision for the country, to allow backroom boys, backroom girls, and superdelegate elites to override the will of the voters. And yet, everyone on that stage would rather have that than fundamentally respect the will of the electorate. That's extremely concerning. That's extremely concerning that they would rather hand the nomination process over to 500 people who have no accountability than respect the tens of millions of people potentially who cast a ballot for whoever will end up with the most delegates. This shows to Bernie Sanders supporters, folks, that this process isn't over yet. If you look at the projections, things look very good for Bernie Sanders. Things look very, very good for Bernie Sanders. If you read the reports that come out of the Bloomberg campaign and other campaigns, they are very worried that Bernie could build an insurmountable lead as early as Super Tuesday when it comes to a plurality of delegates. And if you look at projection sites like 538, they're giving Bernie Sanders a rather strong chance to be the person that wins the most delegates by convention. But most people are projecting that, at least as of right now, Bernie Sanders and everyone else won't be able to reach a majority of delegates on the first ballot, meaning that the opportunity for backroom dealers and superdelegates to steal the nomination from Bernie, or maybe anybody else that wins a plurality but not a majority, is more than plausible at this moment. And it's incumbent upon us to warn people of this reality, to let people know that the process that's playing out right now, all the debates, all the caucuses, all the primaries taking place across the United States and indeed all over the world wherever Americans live, should not be subverted by 500 party elites who don't have any real accountability to the voters themselves. That's a baseline, and it should be reminded that the people that support Bernie Sanders will not stand for having their will disrespected in such a blatant regard. A couple days ago, I made a video talking about how Van Jones went on Bill Maher and he recounted the big mistake the Democrats made in 2016. He argued that the DNC, the Democratic Party elites, put their thumb on the scale for Hillary Clinton and against Bernie Sanders. And ultimately, Hillary had enough delegates to win without the superdelegates by convention time. But Van was right in noting that if Bernie somehow did manage to win more delegates than Hillary, the superdelegates likely would have stole the nomination from Bernie because they felt they knew better, were smarter, were better able to predict what the voters wanted than the voters themselves. And Van Jones gave a warning to the party. Don't do that this time. Don't steal the nomination from Bernie or from anybody else. Let the voters decide. It can't be put any more simply than that. The voters must decide. The voters, in all their diversity and complexity, they are the best voice to determine who should lead the party in taking on Donald Trump. And right now, a strong plurality of those voters are lining up behind Bernie Sanders and not anyone else. And the superdelegates, they don't matter. They should never matter. They don't matter now, and they shouldn't matter in a quote-unquote contested convention because they do not represent the people. Remember 2016, where superdelegates from states that gave almost all their actual delegates to Bernie voted for Hillary anyway, basically spitting on the people of their state. That could very well happen again this time if the superdelegates play a role. So I would strongly urge any Democratic strategist or operative or candidate or official that's considering this sort of last-minute effort to take the nomination from Bernie to bury that idea now, to lock it away and never think about it again, because it will be a historic disaster for the Democratic Party. You will lose a generation. I am not being hyperbolic here. You will lose an entire generation of young, passionate, driven, progressive, forward-looking activists who will know that you will steal their future to enrich yourselves because you would rather have Donald Trump be president than pay a little bit more in taxes and have everyone enjoy healthcare. That's what you'll be telling my generation, the Generation Z kids, everyone else. You'll be telling them that. It also has to be said that we're not looking at a scenario where Bernie Sanders is neck and neck with somebody in pledged delegates. That would be quite a different story. What if, we go to convention and Bernie only has 10 more delegates out of thousands than, say, Michael Bloomberg or Joe Biden? Then you could have an argument. We could actually have a debate about what that means. Maybe somebody beats Bernie in the popular vote, but Bernie gets more delegates. We could have a debate. But if you look at the projections right now, Bernie's essentially double his nearest competitor. If you add up Bloomberg and Biden's delegates, according to the projections right now, they just eke out Bernie Sanders. So the question becomes, if the backroom elites, the backroom dealers, the neoliberals, and the superdelegates get together to steal the nomination from Bernie, who the hell do you give it to? No one else on that stage, no one else in the field can claim any level of support in terms of voters or in terms of delegates that Bernie Sanders is projected to have. It would be a blatant effort to simply take the nomination away from Bernie rather than have a real debate about a potential alternative to him. But ultimately, guys, this is a warning flare to Bernie Sanders, his staff, his volunteers, his supporters, the people who believe in him. The biggest and clearest and easiest solution to all of this is for us to win even harder than we've already been winning. If Bernie Sanders can increase his voting support, if Bernie Sanders can have a strong Nevada and South Carolina, if Bernie Sanders can build up a massive lead on Super Tuesday, if Bernie Sanders can build strong support and continue to fundraise as people drop out of the race, as they have difficulties fundraising and generating and keeping support, then we can help ensure that Bernie Sanders gets a majority of delegates or gets close to that majority threshold where it's not easy to steal it from him. That's the only thing we can do right now. We do not control the party bigwigs. We don't control the superdelegates. No one controls them but the rich and wealthy and well-connected. But we do control our own destiny from now until the convention. Get Bernie a majority of delegates, and they can't steal it from him.